Hi, my name is Aya. You're watching Aya Reads, and I'm here to do another recommendations video. This time it's going to be forced proximity. So forced proximity can happen in a lot of different ways. In fact, most or a lot of romances have forced proximity because that is how the characters are getting together usually. There's always some sort of forced proximity thing going on. But I have 10 recommendations for you, and I have 5 contemporary romances, 1 novella, 2 romantasies, 1 paranormal, and 1 historical. So I'm going to start with the contemporaries first. The first one is Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. The forced proximity in here is that they are temporary roommates. So this is about Fox and Hannah, and they met actually in the first book, because in the first book, her sister got together with his best friend. In the last book, like in the first book, they became very good friends. He's a womanizer. He has a lot of women. He's the one night stand type of guy, and she's looking for something serious, but she also has this crush on, she works in the film industry doing music, I'm pretty sure, and she has a crush on this director. And now they are filming actually in his town, and while they're filming, she's actually staying at his house. And like I said, they've been friends, but there's always been something more going on. And because they're living together and he sees her trying to get together with this director guy, feelings start to develop, and he starts taking steps, and she does too, I think. It has been a while since I read this one, so I'm not 100% sure how they actually get together, but I do know that she usually lives in LA. The fact that she's there in town, constantly being around him and also living in his house, is what causes him to finally take action to finally get her. So this is a very good book. I also really love the first book. It happened one summer, so I would recommend both of them. Next is Flawless by Elsie Silver. This is the first book in her Chestnut Spring series, and this is a very, very popular series. But the first book is just not as popular as all the other ones. But this I really enjoyed. This follows Red and Summer, and Red is a professional bull rider, and he got in trouble because he made fun of one of his sponsors. Like he said that he hated milk, even though milk is one of his, like, milk companies are one of his biggest sponsors. So his PR agent sends his daughter to babysit him, basically. So she has to go with him on tour, she has to go with him to these bull riding events to keep him from doing something wrong again. And of course, they're on the road, they're constantly around each other. She actually has to babysit him. Even when they're home, she's actually living at his house. So that is where the forced proximity comes in, and that is how they ultimately fall in love. Of course, when people are on the road, inevitably one of the rooms, there's something wrong with it where they have to share a bed, which also happened here. I think her heating didn't work, so her room was freezing, and he offered for her to stay in his bed. And this was so good. This is the start to a beautiful series. You don't have to necessarily read these books in order, but this book really starts off a lot of the rest of the stories, especially the second and fourth book really happened because these two got together. So I really loved it. And yeah, if you for some reason started with Heartless, I would say definitely read Flawless too. The Frat Boy by Nikki Sloan. This is the fourth book in her Nashville Neighborhood series, but you don't have to read them in order. In fact, I read this one first. This follows Colin and Madison, and she's in a sorority, he's in a fraternity, and every year they have this competition. And this year things got out of hand because she accused his frat of cheating, and then that resulted in a giant mud fight, which resulted in both of them getting kicked out of their respective sorority and fraternity. And now they both need a place to stay and a job to kind of finance that. So they both answer this ad making adult movies, because this ad says that it comes with housing. And they only realize the other one also signed up at audition, where they actually have to perform together for their audition. And they both end up getting hired, so that is where the forced proximity comes in. They're roommates, they live together in this house, plus they're also co-workers, because everybody in this house makes these movies together. So there's a bunch of movies they have to make where they have to, have sex with each other. So this is forced proximity times 2, and I really, really love this book. In fact, it was one of my favorite books I read last year. I really enjoyed this book. I loved Colin and Madison. It's a very good forced proximity situation. In the Likely Event by Rebecca Yarros, this is a second chance romance, and it's basically told in alternate chapters. So one chapter is in the present and the other chapter is in the past, and the past spans 7 years where you see them meeting for the first time, see them constantly, it never really working out, and then ultimately you see why they have not been speaking for 3 years. And in the present, she actually works for this politician, and she goes to Afghanistan right around the time where the Taliban takes over again. And he is a soldier in like a special ops. He's tasked to protect her. So this is also like a bodyguard romance, and that's why the forced proximity occurs, because he literally has to be wherever she is. Like, they have hotel rooms, he's in the room across from hers. But every time she has to go out, he's like sticking to her like glue. And because of that forced proximity situation, they are forced to confront what happened in the past and forced to confront their feelings. And I really, really enjoyed this book. Once again, one of my favorites I read last year. I would highly recommend it. I know some criticism of this book is, why does it have to take place like in like a real setting, actually, of the Taliban taking over? That didn't really bother me, but if that's not something you want to read about, then steer clear. But I thought this was a beautiful romance, and I truly, truly believe that these two were soulmates. And the last contemporary romance is Final Offer by Lauren Asher. This is the third book in her Dreamland Billionaire series, and it's actually the only book I read in the Dreamland Billionaire series, so you don't really have to read them in order. But basically, this series follows 3 different brothers, and their grandfather, who's a Walt Disney type figure in this world, has given them all tasks to complete in order to receive their inheritance. And Cal's task is to spend one last summer at their lake house, and then after the summer he has to sell this house. He's ready to do that, but once he gets there, he realizes that his ex-girlfriend, his high school sweetheart, has been living there, and she doesn't want to sell. And his grandfather actually not only left him this house, he also left her this house. And because Cal really wants to sell, he ends up living at the pool house sort of place next door, but it's also like it's part of the property. And eventually they all move into this little house, her daughter, and him, because the lakeside house needs renovations. And that's once again where the forced proximity comes in. The reason they broke up all those years ago is because he's an addict, and he's still an addict when he comes back. But of course, their feelings for each other never really went away. So they have to confront that. They have to confront that they're still in love with each other, even though he still has the issues he's always had. He's willing to change, but of course, can she really trust him? There's a daughter in the mix now as well, who he really falls for, and she really falls for him as well. The daughter is like one of the cutest little girls ever. I really love this book, and yeah, definitely the forced proximity is how they're falling in love again, and I enjoyed every single moment of it. Now for the one novella, it's also technically contemporary. It is Hollow's Grove by Lee Jacot. So this is one of the books in her Holly Nights series. This one takes place around Halloween. You don't necessarily have to read these books around the holiday. Like, it just mentions that it's Halloween, but this really could take place at any time. Basically, you follow 2 characters, and he's her friend's brother, so it's brother's best friend, or it's best friend's brother, sorry. And he always pranks her, and she gets scared very easily, and she doesn't like him at all, but he's very attractive. His name is Dorian, which of course he's attractive if his name is Dorian, but he has always like been intrigued by her, and he's also a pleasure dom. His sister and her friend, she wants to do like this team building exercise for her work, and she does like basically this whole Clue type of scenario where they actually have to solve like a murder and stuff like that, and she asked them to also be a part of this thing where they are playing like the side characters, like the maid and stuff like that, the maid and the butler. And while they are there, first of all, he wants to finally confess his feelings, but also he loves to scare her, so they play this game of him chasing her and stuff like that. It was really good. I really like these holiday novellas that Lee Jacot does, and this is one of my favorites in her series. Now for the 2 romantasies. The first one is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. So this is my recommendation for those of you who have not read Fourth Wing yet. So this follows Violet Sorrengail, who has these ligament. Oh, this is another Rebecca Yarros. I did not realize that I had 2 books by her. But anyway, she has ligament issues, and in this world you could be part of different quadrants, and she always thought that she was going to be part of the scribe quadrant because she's not very, like, she cannot do a lot of like real physical things because of her ligaments and her ligament pain. But last minute her mom forces her to go into the writer's quadrant, which is basically a death sentence because even like strong people die while trying to get through the trials and tribulations of becoming a dragon rider. And there's another problem because there was a revolution years ago, and the children of said revolution all had to be forced to go into the writer's quadrant, and they all hate her mom, and therefore they hate her. So there's a real chance that they might actually end up killing her. And one of those people is Xaden, whose father was the leader of the revolution. The forced proximity actually is the fact that their dragons are mates. So Violet's dragon and Xaden's dragon are mates. And because of that, they have to be in forced proximity because their dragons have to be around each other. Because if they are separated for too long, they become crazy. And also, there's also things with feelings. Like, if their dragons are horny, they also get horny. So it's like shenanigans ensue. And this was so great. I really enjoyed this book. And I specifically love that portion of it where they're forced to be together because their dragons love each other. Great. It was just like chef's kiss amazing. This is technically a cozy fantasy, but it does have a romantic element as well, and it's Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. So this follows Hala, who has inherited her great uncle's estate, but her family wants her to marry like her cousin or something so that they could also inherit this estate, and she doesn't want to. So, and they have locked her in their house. Basically, they imprisoned her in this house. So she decides, then fuck you, I'm gonna kill myself. So she grabs a sword, and while I'm ready to impale herself on the sword, but when she takes the sword out of the sheath, this man appears who's been trapped in this sword, and now he's tasked to protect her, and that is where the forced proximity comes in, because he's basically her sword and shield and stuff like that. So he has to protect her, and eventually she wants to help him get free of the sword. And this was not really my favorite, but it is a very good forced proximity situation because these two, they literally need to be close by, and he can go back into the sword. So that is he's always around her at all times. So that is where the forced proximity comes in with this one. My only paranormal romance that I have is Resting Witch Face by Juliet Cross. So this is actually a second chance romance. Jules and Ruben. Jules is a witch, Ruben is a vampire. They used to have a relationship 12 years ago. She broke it off, and now 12 years later, he's ready to, he's given her space, but now he's ready to take back what's his. And in this world, they, the paranormal creatures actually live longer than regular humans do. So 12 years, it's still a very long time, but in the grand scheme of things, they will have a longer lifespan. And the forced proximity in this one is, in the first book, okay, so in this world, werewolves are very ostracized from the rest of the community. In the first book, one of the sisters, the Savoy sisters, gets together with a werewolf. And because of that, the sisters realize that it's not fair that the werewolves have been treated like this, that not all werewolves are the same. So ever since the first book, they have been trying to get more rights for the werewolves, and Jules is the head witch, so she's really taken this task on. And in this book, her and Ruben go through the US and also to the UK to convince other leaders to give wolves more rights. And that is where the forced proximity comes in. They are traveling. Ruben finally confesses his feelings and tells her that he wants to make a go of this. I believe there's also a one bed trope, of course. You always have that, like I said, with Flawless, when there's road trips and stuff involved. I really love this series. It's a great paranormal series. And basically, it's 6 books. 2 involve a witch with a vampire, 2 involve a witch with a werewolf, and 2 involve a witch with a grim. And it's so good. And this is a great second chance forced proximity situation. And last but most certainly not least is my only historical romance, and it's The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn. So this is the second book in the Bridgerton series, and it's my favorite book in the Bridgertons. You follow Anthony and Kate. And Anthony is the oldest Bridgerton, and he needs to get married to, continue on the Bridgerton line. But his father died when he was younger, and he is afraid that if he loves someone, like he is convinced that he's gonna die young, just like his father, and he doesn't want to fall in love and do that to the woman he loves, leave her widowed, just like his mom was widowed all those years ago. So he decides he's just gonna get married, but it's not gonna be for love. He doesn't want to love the woman he's gonna marry. So he's telling that to his brothers, and Kate is listening in because her sister is like the most beautiful woman in the ton. So Anthony actually has his eyes set on her sister. But like I said, Kate knows that he's never gonna love her sister, and she really loves her sister, so she doesn't want to do that to her sister. She wants her sister to thrive and really love who she's gonna get married to, and she really wants that man to love her sister as well. So Kate does everything in her power to constantly be around them while he is courting her sister, and that is where the forced proximity comes in. Anytime Anthony is there to court her sister, Kate is there to kind of thwart him. And yeah, that is where, like I said, that is where the forced proximity comes in. While they're on these dates, Anthony realizes that he finds Kate intriguing, and he's more intrigued by Kate than he ever was with his sister. And there's a beautiful scene of her. So she's afraid of lightning and thunder, and there's this beautiful scene of them actually staying in the same house at this house party. Her having a panic attack because of the storm, and him comforting her, and it's just so good. I really love this book. I've been meaning to reread this book for a while now, and I'm gonna make it my goal in life to finally reread this book in 2024. I'm very excited about it. So these were all my recommendations for Forced Proximity. Definitely let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were. Also, I would really love to know some of your recommendations for forced proximity. I would really love to know if you have an interesting form of forced proximity, a book that you would recommend that has an interesting form of forced proximity that you don't really see a whole lot of in romances. I would really love to know that, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know by leaving a like if you did, and thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.